Hello and welcome to Too Many Movies, the podcast where we discuss Blu-rays, DVDs, and even the occasional VHS tape. I'm your host, Hal, and here today I'm going to be talking about a very special DVD. Special in the sense that it's not your typical DVD. So, one of the things I have, one of the special kinds of DVDs I have in my collection, and Blu-rays too, is the collection DVD or the collection Blu-ray. Basically, just a collection of certain movies, and you get just DVD. Like, I guess because the DVD market was just so vast, you get just the weirdest shit on DVD. So I have here with me today is my triple feature director's cut DVD of all three of the first three Lethal Weapon movies. Lethal Weapon being the franchise starring Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, basically being these like two. It's a buddy cop franchise, and for some reason Warner Brothers or whoever the fuck decided to release a DVD collection in the year 2006. I'm seeing of just the first three Lethal Weapons, and I think that's really funny because they made a fourth Lethal Weapon in 1998. So I don't understand why they decided to just do the first three. I guess maybe because the fourth one is the worst one, but yeah, in any case, I own a 4-pack Blu-ray set of the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher Batman movies. So like Warner Brothers sees Batman and Robin fit enough to be on Blu-ray. I don't understand why they wouldn't make a quadruple feature. This is like automatically, this is already just so strange to me that they, the sense that they made a feature DVD where it's like, it's a collection DVD, like on Lethal Weapon. Sure, I get that, but I don't understand why they would only put the first three and then not the fourth one. Like if this came out, say, before 1998 when they made a fourth one, like that would make sense to me. I happen to own a Die Hard trilogy pack of just the first three Die Hards, but that's because that came out in 2006 and the fourth Die Hard didn't come out until 2007, so that makes sense to me. Also, that I only own the Die Hard trilogy because, well, the fourth and fifth ones are just terrible, but that's a DVD pack for another episode. Right now we're talking about the Lethal Weapons one. So the other interesting part about this DVD is that it's just a standard DVD case. So you open it up and it has the section for the disc, and then you have a little flap for another disc, but there's only two discs because one of them has both Lethal Weapon and Lethal Weapon 2 on them. Like one side is Lethal Weapon and the other side is Lethal Weapon 2, and it's blank. But then Lethal Weapon 3 gets its own disc. It's like, what is this? What the fuck is this box? I'm like, I didn't expect to just talk about the box for this long. I want to get into talking about the movies, but like, I'm just like looking at this box and it just is confounding me. It's just, I'm mesmerized by it. I'm like, what is this? It's just, We're off to a weird start with this one. Let's put it that way. So anyway, on today's episode, I figured I'd talk about the movies on this disc. And even though it's not included, I still wanted to talk about Lethal Weapon 4. Me being a completionist, I got to see every single movie in a franchise, even the bad ones. That's just how my brain works. Like, I need to watch them, even though I know some of them turn out bad. Like, that's just how I roll. So even though there's only the first three Lethal Weapons on this disc, I wanted to watch the fourth one. And, I wanted to get an idea of, is this worth keeping? Is the fourth one good enough that I want to get maybe a 4-pack of the Blu-rays? Well, I'll discuss that later on. First, let's just get into talking about the movies themselves. So let's start off with reading the back of this box. So in big letters, it has on the back, it says, expanded director's cuts make for a heavy loaded entertainment arsenal! Exclamation point. Okay. Reckless cop Riggs, Mel Gibson, and family man Murtaugh, Danny Glover, are partners whose work routine is never routine in the first 3 films of the series that reinvented buddy cop action. Yeah, only the first 3. All here in exclusive to DVD director's cut, adding footage not seen in theaters. So, I was lucky enough to see the director's cut of all 3 of these movies. I'm not sure if I saw the director's cut of Lethal Weapon 4, but I'll get to that movie. Lethal Weapon, in bold letters so you know they're talking about the first one, pits our squabbling heroes against a death-dealing drug ring, and Riggs takes a plunge with a would-be suicide jumper. Yeah, that does happen. All right, I'll talk about the other 2 movies in this back section when I get to those movies. Let's start with Lethal Weapon. So, like I just said, Lethal Weapon pits our squabbling heroes against a death-dealing drug ring, ... and Riggs takes a plunge with a would-be suicide jumper. Yeah, that happens. I don't really think that's a major plot point, though. I mean, it happens in the movie, but why is it on the back here? Like, does the movie take that as, like, one of the big scenes to remember from the first movie? Oh God, this disc! This box, this DVD is just. I feel like I shouldn't be this confounded by a DVD, but I just am because I don't understand it. All right, so first off, Lethal Weapon, is it a good movie? Yeah, I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was a very fun action 80s movie. It's very much a movie where you can see how it influenced a lot of other movies. It's a buddy cop movie. You have these 2 gigantic egos going at each other. You have Danny Glover, you have Mel Gibson, and they're just these clashing personalities. You have Mel Gibson, who's this, like the box describes him. He's like this reckless cop. He has this death wish. He's insane. And the movies explain that he's insane because, well, I mean, at least with this one, it's because he's depressed because his wife died. And it's like, okay, he's still kind of a psychopath. Like, he does some really messed up shit in these movies. It's just, it's kind of funny. It's really comical. Like, if he existed in real life, he'd be seen as a psychopath, which, I mean, Mel Gibson is seen as a psychopath, so, well, what do you know? I guess I was right. Okay, but anyway, Danny Glover is kind of the opposite. He's this old, gruff, old-time cop. He's just like, he's a family man. He's getting old, especially in this movie. He's always saying the line, I'm getting too old for this shit, so because he's an old man. He's seen it all. He's just so tired of everything. He just wants everything to just go simply. He's so done with everything. And that's what makes Lethal Weapon as a franchise work. Even as bad as the other movies get, that was one thing that was always consistently entertaining, was the dynamic between Riggs and Murtaugh. Mel Gibson and Danny Glover have amazing chemistry. They're hilarious. Every time they squabble, it's funny. Like, it's entertaining to watch. They were always the 2 best parts of the movies. The second one I'll get to, but they are always consistently entertaining. Even when they changed writers for these movies, the actors really sell these characters. And you could never replace them. Like, you could never replace Mel Gibson as Riggs. You could never replace Danny Glover as Murtaugh. Like, these guys are these characters. You take that away, you just don't have the same impact. And it's fascinating to watch them just yell at each other. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember a ton of scenes from the first one. Like I said, it's a good movie, but I'm going to be honest, I probably remember the least about it. Probably because I watched the third and fourth one very recently, and the second one I'll get to, but so this was the one I watched like a couple of days ago at this point, and I don't remember a lot about it. I don't remember hating it. It was a very entertaining movie. It was very fun. It was very exciting. It had some funny lines. It had the usual 80s cheese moments. It had like the saxophone music that you hear throughout the rest of the series. Like, it does a good job being a good, inoffensive movie. Like, you know what you get when you get a movie called Lethal Weapon. It's just a simple action movie. The bad guys are bad guys. The good guys are good guys. You're not really going to be challenged by anything in Lethal Weapon. It's a hard R action fest. There's a lot of blood, but like, and it deals with drugs and sex and violence. It's like, yeah, but it is what it is. Again, I'm kind of struggling to even remember like specific scenes. Okay, there are specific scenes I remember. Like one of our introduction scenes to Mel Gibson's character Riggs is he shows up on a scene where a guy is like holding this elementary school hostage, and he's like shooting anybody that even comes close to the school. And so Riggs just walks up anyway and like taunts the guy and then shoots him. Like, no problem. Like, he ran the risk of dying and killing other people, but that just shows you, like, this scene shows you, like, oh, he doesn't care. He's depressed. He has a death wish. He's crazy. He's a fucking psychopath. Like, he'll just do anything for the thrill of it. And yeah, as the box says, there's a part where like he tries to get a suicide jumper off a ledge, and by doing so, he just jumps off the ledge with the suicide jumper. It's like, but I mean, they land on one of those like blow up things that they have for people to like land on, so it breaks their fall. But still, it's just like this. It's the idea that he's falling. He's just jumping with the guy, and the guy like walks away like, oh man, you're crazy, man. Like, get away from me. It's like these are good scenes. I can't really say this movie blows me away in any way. Like I said, you get what you get with Lethal Weapon. It's a good movie. I enjoyed it. I would watch it again. It's a Christmas movie, technically. It takes place around Christmas. And with that said, it's the reason I bring that up is because, so it's a Christmas movie. It takes place in LA. I was thinking the whole time, man, this reminds me of Die Hard, and I fucking love Die Hard. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it. I love watching it around Christmas. It's a Christmas classic to me. It's a tradition. I watch it every year around the holidays. And this one, I can't really see myself returning to Lethal Weapon in the same way. I can't really see myself returning to it as often as I would Die Hard. Like Die Hard, I would watch every year for Christmas. Whereas this, I feel like I could watch maybe every couple of years, maybe every other year. I don't really see myself returning to it as often. And because I then saw the second movie, it really did put into perspective how kind of, I don't want to say forgettable, because I do remember stuff about the movie, and I do like it. It's a good movie, and I would really recommend it. It's just, I prefer the second movie, and I feel like that is a good segue into talking about the second movie. So, as we left off with the back of this DVD, Joe Pesci dash okay dash. So the reason the box says okay is because that's what Joe Pesci says in the movies. That's kind of his thing, is he says okay a lot. He just says okay a lot. Hey guys, Tony Stark here to explain the joke. Anyway, Joe Pesci is a motor-mouthed What the fuck? Oh my god. This fucking DVD box. Joe Pesci is a motor-mouthed witness needing protection in Lethal Weapon 2, the series entry with the booby-trapped toilet. Yeah, that's... You know what? This box is very proud of that fact. And it should be. Lethal Weapon 2. Alright, I'm just going to say it. I fucking love Lethal Weapon 2. If I sounded bored with Lethal Weapon... It's because I'm a little harsh towards that movie. Just because Lethal Weapon 2, fucking phenomenal, dude. I loved Lethal Weapon 2. It was awesome. It was hilarious. It was exactly what I wanted out of an action movie like that's called Lethal Weapon 2 and that has a plot like Lethal Weapon 2. So it starts off right away. It starts off in the middle of a car chase scene with Murtaugh and Riggs just chasing some guy. We don't know. We don't know. Like, we're literally just dropped into it. And usually that would annoy a lot of people. It probably does annoy a lot of people. I mean, personally, I'm like, all right, this movie doesn't care. Let's go. Like, I'm all for this. I'm all for this crazy ass opening. And the car chase is phenomenal. It's so good. It's such a good car chase. Just, it's crazy. And they have this running joke throughout the rest of the movie because they're in Murtaugh's wife's car. And he's just like, all right, we can't get a scratch on this. And just throughout the whole movie, they're just beating the shit out of that car. Like, everything just goes wrong. It's a piece of shit by the end. It's hilarious. It's a good running joke. There's a lot of these movies have running jokes. This one has the best running jokes. This one has the best callbacks. This one, it's just really funny. And so basically the whole movie is Murtaugh and Riggs investigating this drug ring they accidentally come across because there's this South African diplomat who's claiming diplomatic immunity so then he can just like run a drug ring and he can't get in trouble because he's a diplomat. I get what the movie's saying, and like I get that politicians are greedy scumbags in real life, but like this does seem the thing about this movie is like, okay, everybody knows he's running this drug ring, but he still claims diplomatic immunity, and that makes it okay. Like, I don't know. I don't know politics. I don't know international laws or whatever. Clearly I'm ignorant in that, but like, I don't know. It just seemed a little weird that he treats it like he can do whatever the fuck he wants. It's like, I don't know if that's true, but it's a movie. Like, really, who gives a shit? And really, who gives a shit? Because the rest of the movie is just hilarious. Every scene has something memorable about it. There's this part at the beginning of the movie where Murtaugh's daughter, Rianne, is like talking about how, she's in a commercial and they're going to watch her commercial on the TV. Like, they're like excited for this. And she's very excited to show them. And then they see the commercial and it's a commercial for condoms. And Murtaugh is like, oh, geez, like my baby girl is in a condom commercial. Like, and it's funny because like Rianne didn't think to tell them that. Like, why wouldn't you tell them that? Or like, did she not know? Like, this is just like, usually this would piss me off, but like it's presented in such a weirdly hilarious way that I don't care. And plus the fact it's never brought up again. Like, nobody, like, the only time it comes back up is because like Murtaugh's like coworkers like see the commercial, and so they like make him a condom plant and they just put it on his desk, and like that's the end of that scenario. Like, that's the end of that storyline. It's like, what a weirdly specific but really hilarious subplot to have. And there's just so many good action scenes in Lethal Weapon 2. There's so many good explosions. There's so many good car chases. Like I said, the opening car chase, like, mwah, like really, really good. There's so many good scenes with the villain. Like, there's a scene towards the beginning where he brings in a guy and he like brings him into his office, and there's plastic all over the office. There's like a plastic tarp on the bottom of the office. He's like, oh, don't worry. I'm getting my office repainted. And then he like has a talk with the guy, and then he shoots the guy, and then the guy falls on the plastic, and then they wrap him up in plastic. It's like, oh, great setup, great execution of that. And then later on, there's a scene where the villain is chewing out the guy who shot the other guy, because he's a henchman, and he's like chewing out his henchman, and the henchman is like looking around the floor of the room, and the villain's just like, what are you doing? And the henchman's like, oh, I'm just making sure I'm not standing on plastic. It's like, oh, what a great callback. Like, oh, like such a good idea. Like little details like that. I love little details like that. Like that just shows that you didn't just put in something once. You actively put it in there, so then it's like called back again. So then you understand, like it keeps you on the edge of your seat. Like, oh, this is a working world. Like people think and do things in this world, and they it's kind of hard to explain, but like then early in the movie you see that Murtaugh is getting his house, he's getting like an extension on his garage, and so there's a guy using a nail gun in the garage. And then later on in the movie, when a bunch of hired goons try and attack Murtaugh, he doesn't have his gun. I don't remember why. He uses the nail gun to like get the hired goons. It's like it's little things like that, like little callbacks, little foreshadowing moments. Like I love that. I love when a movie does that. I love and the movie doesn't really call attention to it. It's just like, oh, we got the nail gun here, we got a nail gun in that scene. Like it comes back. Simple. Like you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything crazy with that. You can just do that. Like, oh, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And then you have so many good scenes. You have so many good explosions. You have a part where like the bad guy is just totally going off the rails, and he's just killing off all the other cops in their division, in Murtaugh and Riggs' division. And there's this one of the coolest deaths I've ever seen in an action movie. This woman goes for a swim in her pool. So this cop lady goes for a swim in her pool. So she walks onto the diving board, she jumps off, and her diving board explodes, and she dies like that. You just see her fly up in the air, and she just lands in the pool, and that's how she dies. She dies by an exploding diving board. When the hell have you ever seen that in another movie? It's bonkers. Like, who comes up with that? That's brilliant. Oh God, it was so good. And then you get to the climax. God, there's just so many other scenes I need to talk about, but like, there's just so much to Lethal Weapon 2. There is so much. It's so exciting and adventurous and stupid, but like the good kind of stupid. Like, this is the kind of stupid I love seeing in these kinds of action movies. Anyway, so like not Murtaugh, Riggs befriends like some lady who works for the villain, and then she's like, oh, I don't like the villain anymore, and it's just like, oh, okay. And then they like have sex, and it's like, oh, she's the love interest. But then they get shot up by the bad guys, but they escape. But then they get caught by the bad guys, and then Riggs gets caught by the bad guys, and he's wrapped in a jumpsuit and thrown off into the ocean. Now, what's great about that is because in an earlier scene, Riggs bet that he could get out of a jumpsuit for a bet, and he was able to, and it set up that he had a dislocated shoulder. And that was that scene. That it was painfully forced, but like in a way that like I could see Riggs doing that. Like, oh, I bet I could escape from a straitjacket. I'm just crazy enough to do that. Sure, I believe that. Anyway, so then he gets thrown off into the water by the bad guys, and he easily escapes from the straitjacket. It's like, oh, because you set that up earlier. It's like, great. So then he's like, oh, like this is the part where like he's like gonna go save the girl. Nope. She's already at the bottom of the ocean. She's dead. Like, it literally, he like takes the straitjacket off, looks to his right, and there she is, dead, drowned. Like, he can't even save her. Like, she's long dead. Like, oh God, what a great reveal. Such a great reveal of just turning his head, seeing that she's dead. And like it just fills him up with so much rage. And so for the rest of the movie, Mel Gibson is just this crazy psychopath where he'll just murder anything in his way. He goes to like the bad guy's house. And it's on a hill with like stilts on. It's like a house on the side of a hill, so it's got like stilts. So he like wraps a chain around one of the stilts, uses his pickup truck, pulls the stilt, and the house comes crumbling down. And it's like, oh god, it's so cool. Like, oh, and then the final confrontation. They go like see the bad guys are trying to escape by boat to go back to South Africa. It's like, no, we're gonna like take all your money, throw it into the ocean. Like now there's like this giant shootout battle, and it's like, oh, it's so good. And then the bad guy just like shoots Riggs, and you think, oh, Riggs is done for. And Murtaugh's just like, you son of a bitch. And the bad guy goes, diplomatic immunity, and holds up his diplomatic papers. And Murtaugh's just like, fuck this. Shoots him right in the head and just goes, it's been revoked. It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, it was so satisfying. Fucking Lethal Weapon 2, man. Oh, so much more exciting. I don't know why. I don't understand. I don't understand why I like this as much as I do. I just do. And you know what? I don't want to understand why I like it as much as I do. I just like it. It's funny. I had fun with Lethal Weapon 2. I have very fond memories of it from a couple of days ago. Whatever. It was freaking awesome. So worth it. So much fun. Oh, I didn't even talk about Joe Pesci in the movie. Yeah, he was funny. Yeah, he says okay a lot. That's kind of his thing. It's not the worst running joke or catchphrase for a character to have. Joe Pesci, honestly, I was expecting him to be like the Jar Jar Binks of this series. He's not. I can't really say I liked him. I didn't hate him. I was indifferent to him in the movies. It's like, oh, Joe Pesci's here. Cool. Whatever. Moving on to Lethal Weapon 3. I didn't even talk about the toilet bomb. Fuck. All right, back to Lethal Weapon 2. Sorry, I have to talk about the toilet bomb. One of the most tense scenes in Lethal Weapon 2 is the fucking toilet bomb. So Mel Gibson goes to Murtaugh's house, goes to Danny Glover's house, and finds Danny Glover on the toilet. Why? Because he finds out there's a bomb attached to his toilet, and if he gets up, the bomb explodes. Like, that sounds like it would be dumb as shit. And it is. It is very dumb. And that's the point. It's fucking stupid, and I love it. Oh my god, it's so fucking funny. Like, oh, if I get up from this toilet, it's gonna explode and we'll all die. Like, how hilarious would that be? Like, death by exploding toilet. Amazing. And it's actually very tense. Like, oh, how do we solve this? We got to keep it quiet. No, it cuts right to just everybody's flipping their shit. Like, oh, there's all these firefighters and all those bomb squads. And like, Danny Glover's on the fucking toilet. It's like, oh, it's just so funny, but so cool. And they get out of it because they are able to like stall it with like nitrogen or whatever, liquid nitrogen or something. And so then like Riggs pulls Murtaugh off the toilet and they like hide in the bathtub, and then the whole bathroom explodes, and it's like, oh god. Like, that's, you know what? That's what it is. That one segment in the movie, the exploding toilet segment, explains Lethal Weapon 2 very well. It's bonkers, but not in such a way that it's distracting. Like, this is not like a distractingly different movie, like, say, from the first movie. Like in the same way that, like, The Suicide Squad is a completely different movie from Suicide Squad. Like, it still feels within the realm of reality from the first movie, just an eensy bit more comedic and ridiculous. And I like that. I like that it's a movie that's funny, that's just crazy, but not too crazy. And also just not like lame crazy, like actually funny, like exploding toilets, exploding diving boards, tumbling houses. It's just been revoked. Like, that's the kind of shit I love about Lethal Weapon 2. All right. I gotta stop talking about Lethal Weapon 2. I'm sorry, I love this movie, but like, I gotta talk about the other two movies. This is already a very long episode, so I'm just gonna say, I love Lethal Weapon 2. I'm done talking about it. On to the next one. Okay, Lethal Weapon 3. And Rene Russo plays a femme alter ego match for Riggs in Lethal Weapon 3 as the cops target a colleague dealing guns to the street, and Riggs steps onto the ice to rough up a pro hockey game. The puck stops here. Oh, boy. You know what? If reincarnation is real, I want to be reincarnated into a guy who ends up getting a job writing descriptions for DVDs and Blu-rays and VHS tapes. Just, I want to be, I want this as a job. I want to be the guy that just designs DVD covers, that's able to like type out DVD, like that's able to type out movie synopses, and just, I get to put whatever quotes I want on DVDs. Like, I could make some banger DVD covers, dude. Like, that's what I want to be in the next life, is a DVD, synopsis writer, because I could do this shit. This is hilarious. Okay, Lethal Weapon 3. Yeah, not as good as the other two. So, like I said, Lethal Weapon 1, good movie. Lethal Weapon 2, awesome movie. Lethal Weapon 3, I struggle to see why Lethal Weapon 3 really, I mean, it needed to exist. It's a trilogy. Like, of course you're going to make a lethal, and especially after the first two being good, like, you're going to make a third one. I just don't see it as that great. It's not the worst action sequel I've seen. I would sooner watch it again over a ton of third movies. I would watch it over a ton of third action movies. Like, I can't really think of any. Like, I guess Taken 3, for example. Like, yeah, of course I would rather watch Lethal Weapon 3 over Taken 3. Taken 3 fucking sucks. But, like, Lethal Weapon 3, it also kind of sucks. But, I don't know. So, like I said earlier, like, the most consistent factor of these movies, of all four movies, is Mel Gibson and Danny Glover being, like, having great chemistry with each other. And that's no different here. I think what sucks about Lethal Weapon 3 is it's terribly unfocused. I never felt the urgency of the story because I don't think the movie really portrayed it as that urgent. So the main villain is a former cop who's taking advantage of being a former cop in the black market industry by like selling weapons to the black market and building a housing complex with something. I don't know. All I know is that he's a former cop, and like that's the point. It's the same thing as like, I guess it's kind of the same thing as like Sean Bean's character in Goldeneye, how he's like a former spy, or like Javier Bardem in Skyfall. Like they're villains who were once formerly good guys and are now bad guys. It's like, I guess that's what they're going for, but you know, in Goldeneye and Skyfall, like, you understand Sean Bean and Javier Bardem's motivations. Like, you understand them and you see them as characters. I never saw this guy as much of a character. He was the movie just claims like, oh, he's a former cop. It's like, okay, why? Like, why did he leave the force? Did the movie explain that? I don't remember. I was very bored. Like, and I don't feel like the urgency of the movie is really shown because they accidentally come across this conspiracy, and then Rene Russo, is like it's like telling them like, oh, you don't need to worry about this. Like, we'll handle this. It's like, okay. And then they just kind of do whatever. Like, I feel like a lot of scenes in this movie are just kind of like Murtaugh and Riggs just fucking about, and then something happens because they just so happen to be in the same vicinity as the criminals doing bad guy stuff. It's like, okay, whatever. I just don't feel the urgency. And I get it. Like, I'm not expecting Shawshank Redemption or Citizen Kane here, but I'm expecting to feel some urgency. Like, Lethal Weapon 2 understood to keep Riggs and Murtaugh on the case of the South African drug ring. Like, every other scene, like, yeah, they're fucking about and making fun of each other, but like every scene, they're always talking about the current drug bust. They're always like focused on the plot at hand. Not so much here. Like, they just kind of happenstance come across these kinds of stuff. And so it just does. I just don't care. I literally just don't care. Like, by the end of the movie, they're like, oh, it's this giant battle between Riggs, Murtaugh, Rene Russo. Like, they're going up against Jack, the former cop. Like, I think that was his name, Jack Travis. Like, that sounds bland enough to be his name. Yeah, like, anything having to do with the story, I just don't care. Like, the parts that I remember the most about this movie is the character of Dolores, this sassy black lady cop who drives with Murtaugh in that one scene. And then she's not in the movie at all. Well, there's like one scene where she comes back and she tries to give flowers to Murtaugh, even though he's a married man. It's like, really? Like, this is all you're doing with this character? Like, the movie would be infinitely better if she was if she was more of a major character. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, Dolores is hilarious in her 2 scenes, but like, they just don't do anything with her. They're just like, make her sexually assault Danny Glover. It's like, okay, like, that's all you're gonna do? Like, wow, what vastness of creativity from the director of Superman. Like, ugh. And the director of the first 2 Lethal Weapons. Like, come on, Richard Donner. Like, this is the best you had. Ugh, what a waste of a character. And then there's like one scene where, to combat a guard dog, Mel Gibson just gets on all fours and starts eating dog biscuits with the dog, and that's how he wins him over. And then he just adopts the dog. It's like, okay, I'm down with that. That's like weird and out there, but it was funny. I enjoyed it. Like, what a hilarious scene that was wholesome AF or whatever. Like it had nothing to do with the rest of the movie. Like, you could cut it completely. Like, you could cut the guard dog completely. The movie doesn't change at all. It was just a nice scene watching Mel Gibson scratch this dog's belly and eat dog biscuits with him. It's like, that's it. I don't know. Like, you know, I guess maybe that's on me for just expecting a little more from something after Lethal Weapon 2 and just not getting it. Man, it's just not as good. Like, even the opening is just Riggs and Murtaugh accidentally blowing up a building. Like, okay, like, yeah, it's a cool shot of the building exploding, and then they in turn get demoted, but like, I don't know. And then there's this like running thing because Murtaugh is like saying like, oh, I'm going to retire like in a week. And it's like, oh, I just got 3 days until retirement. And like, oh, there's this big action plot about drugs and guns on the street. And like, oh, ex-cop. It's like, oh, I'm getting too old for this. I'm retiring. Spoiler alert, he doesn't retire because I don't remember why. Like, oh, I need to be on the force still. Whatever, man. I don't know. I sound like I'm kind of harsh towards this movie. I am. It really isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I would sooner watch it over a lot of other movies. I just can't say I was ever like blown away. Like, I was really expecting something on the same level as Lethal Weapon 2. And maybe that's on me. Maybe that's on me for having my expectations extremely high. Because, I mean, come on, man. Lethal Weapon 2, like, so good. And Lethal Weapon 3, not the worst. I would recommend it if you've seen the first 2. Just because there are worse movies to come out than Lethal Weapon 3. Like, I'm not even that annoyed by it. So that's the triple feature director's cut of all 3 of these movies. But there is one more movie I wanted to discuss because there's one more movie in the Lethal Weapon franchise. Lethal Weapon 4 from 1998. And it's the last Lethal Weapon movie to be made. And is it any good? Well, it is much like the third movie, where it has the occasional stuff I like. It still has Murtaugh and Riggs going at each other, being funny. Like, I still love that. It still has the same characters I know and love. It still has a lot of great action scenes. There's a part where they drive off a highway, crash through an office building, drive through the office building, and drive back onto the highway. It's like, that was cool. Like, that was really, really interesting and cool. And then there's a scene where Mel Gibson drives a forklift. I got a lot of ironic enjoyment out of that, because that means Mel Gibson's forklift certified. That's cool. But there's just a lot that I just don't like about this one that the third one didn't have. So this one has Chris Rock as the guy who is having sex with Murtaugh's daughter, but Murtaugh doesn't know that for some reason. Like, he knows he's going to be a grandpa, but he doesn't know who the father is of his grandson. And then Mel Gibson finds out, and so he keeps it from him. And so Chris Rock is like this cop in their precinct, and he's like working for Murtaugh. He's like, oh, he's being extra nice to him. And Murtaugh in turn takes this as Chris Rock having a crush on him. And that leads to, like, you know, the usual 90s gay jokes where it's just like, Captain, we should really be, like, just misunderstandings, vaguities, just vague sayings, and just, it's not funny. It's like, the joke is that, like, oh, Murtaugh thinks Chris Rock is gay. Like, that's the joke. Like, that's the honest to God joke. It's not funny. And I'm not saying that, like, oh, gay jokes can't be funny. You can't make fun of gay people. It's like, gay jokes can be funny. I think anything can be funny. But they need to be a joke. Like, where's the joke? Like, oh, I think this man has feelings for me. Where's the joke? Where's the funny? I don't get it. Like, ugh. It's not funny. Like, I don't find it funny. It's just a misunderstanding, but, like, he thinks he's gay. Like, oh, boo hoo, boo freakity hoo. It's just so stupid. And then the villains are like these bland martial arts, kung fu, vague Asian characters. It's like, oh yeah, every Asian character knows kung fu. Like, oh, real original 90s. Oh God, the stereotypes in this movie are very distracting. Maybe there were stereotypes in the other movies because it's a movie they were movies made in the 80s and 90s. It's like, I'm sure there were, like, stereotypes, but, like, I don't know. It's more apparent in this movie, and it's not fun. And the movie's just so boring. It's just so unbelievably boring. I'm like, I get it. You're running out of steam here. And you can see why this is the last one. It ends pretty much where it should. It feels like a fourth movie in a franchise. Like, oh, we're doing this again. And it just has such weird subplots. Like, there's a subplot where Murtaugh finds a Chinese family that's immigrating to the U.S. and he takes them in because he knows that if they get caught by the authorities, they're gonna be deported. But then it's like, okay, you're just gonna keep this 17-member family in your house discreetly. Like I get it. Like, yeah, I think the officer at the beginning was just like, oh, they're coming into this country illegally, is a huge dick. But it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're not doing anything any better. He's like, oh, I'm freeing them. You know, I'm freeing them from torture. It's like, you're not freeing them. You're keeping them captive in your house. Like, how is this the American dream? Like, I don't get it, movie. Like, whatever. It's so stupid how this movie treats that aspect of it. It's like, it's It's just so stupid. It's just so unbelievably stupid. Another thing that's really interesting is that Al Leong is in this movie, who is a very famous character actor, very famous stunt character in movies. Like, he's been in Die Hard. He was just in Big Trouble in Little China. He was in the first Lethal Weapon, which is my point here. He was in the first one. He plays a character who dies. And then he comes back for this movie too, but he's a completely different character. And I'm sure that was done just because they wanted to hire him because he's a very famous Asian stuntman. But like, I'm almost positive the people who casted this movie just casted him because they didn't know that he was in the first one, because they're just like, oh, he's an Asian stuntman, like whatever. Knowing this movie and how it treats its Asian characters, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't know. And again, much like the third one, I do sound like I'm very harsh towards this movie. And in all real honesty, much like the third one, it's not the worst movie I've seen. It's not the worst fourth movie I've seen. It could have been worse. It, honest to God, could have been worse with Lethal Weapon 4. I've seen more insulting movies than Lethal Weapon 4. I can kind of understand why it's not included in this DVD set, but at the same time, I mean, Lethal Weapon 3 wasn't all that great. Why include that one? So anyway, to kind of wrap this up in some way, Lethal Weapon 1, good movie. Highly recommend. Lethal Weapon 2, great movie. Highly, highly recommend. Lethal Weapon 3, movie. You could watch it. You could also not watch it. I mean, you're honestly just going to get... It doesn't really matter either way. Like, I guess I'd recommend it because it's not terrible, but if you really want something on the same level as Lethal Weapon 2 with the third and fourth movies, you're not going to get that. Now for the final decision. Do I get rid of this triple feature director's cut DVD of the first three Lethal Weapons? Because would I rather turn it in for a Blu-ray set for like a Blu-ray set of all four Lethal Weapons? So then I have all four of them together and I get Lethal Weapon 2 in crisp HD. So here's what I'm thinking at the moment. If I were to get rid of this, and I do think I should get rid of this because I just don't see the point in owning just the first three, because I don't think that's fair to the fourth one. Even though I don't like the third or fourth one, I don't know, owning the third one and not the fourth one just seems kind of weird, because it's like they're really not any different from each other. So like, why would I keep the third one and not have the fourth one? But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to keep the third and fourth one because they just didn't really blow me away all that much. I don't really see the point in owning them. Whereas the first two, I completely see. So I think it's an all or nothing deal. Like if I don't have all four of them, then I just don't see the point. So I'm getting rid of this triple feature. And if I ever get my hands on a 4-pack Blu-ray set of Lethal Weapon, I'll keep that. Like, I'll have all four of them on Blu-ray. I don't want any of this partial bullshit where it's just like the first three. Like, I'd rather have all of them, because I'd just rather would have the opportunity to see all four of them again. Mainly, I'm going to use it because I would rather watch the first and second one, especially the second one. So I don't want any of this partial bullshit. But maybe I don't want to go right for the Blu-ray pack because, again, the third and fourth one, I'm kind of not really jazzed about. I would honestly rather just own the first two on separate Blu-rays, just because I could see myself returning to them more often. So basically, whether or not I ever own Lethal Weapon again on Blu-ray, whether it's a 4-pack or if it's just the first two on separate Blu-rays, who knows when and if that'll happen. That's a whole other discussion that I'll eventually come across, I'm sure. But for now, as for this specific DVD, I am not keeping this. I just don't see the point. I don't see the point. I would rather them be on nice Blu-rays, and I would rather have it be all or nothing. That about does it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.